I would like to request our next resource person, CA Sanket S. Naik, to come up to the dais. Our esteemed resource person for today's session, who will be shedding light on the topic, which is of great importance in today's dynamic business landscape. In a world where innovation and entrepreneurship are driving economic growth and transformation, MSMEs and startups play an important role. One of the key challenges they face is serving necessary funding to turn their ideas into thriving businesses. Our resource person, CA Sanket S. Naik, is an expert in the field of finance and entrepreneurship. CA Sanket S. Naik has completed his CA course at a very young age of 21 years and practicing since then. He has completed his Certified Public Accountant course at the age of 23. He has spoken as resource persons at various events and seminars on various topics throughout his career. I now request CA Sanket S. Naik to share his valuable insights on the topic. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
It's my very proud privilege to be talking here because two of my alma maters, St. Aloysius College as well as Mangalore branch of SIRC, both where I studied my schooling and college as well as completed my CA, have invited me here. So it's a really proud honor to be here. And So let me start with our topic, MSME funding. So we had a lot of discussions about startups from the morning, I believe, and also I think previous session there was some discussion about MSMEs. So let us jump right into it. So the definition, I believe everyone is more or less familiar. Just for the sake of information, I've just highlighted it. So it's both the thresholds. If you cross any of it, you go to the next category. And this is important because many of the things are, many of the benefits are available for the micro and small, may not be available for the medium sector. So that is why it plays a very important role. And they have revised now, earlier it used to be gross block, now WDV can be considered, and also export turnover can be excluded, and all these things, benefits have been further given to MSMEs today. So normally what happens in a life cycle of MSMEs, we normally observe that there are three stages. We have the early stage. In the initial stage, what happens is people fund by themselves, whatever funds they have from their earlier jobs sometimes, or from their family members, from their friends. They may be putting the funds, or could be angel investors who bring in the money. Then after this stage, normally they go for growth stage, wherein normally they approach bankers. Also, they can approach VCs as well. And finally, what happens is in a mature stage, let's say an MSME has grown to a very large stage, then they may want to go for an IPO as well, because that is when they will actually get real value for their business. So it is not just this one. Now, many people are under misconception that bank funding will be available only in the subsequent stage. Let's say once the unit is established, or let's say there are 3 years of financials or so on. But that's not really the case. Though bankers are more comfortable for existing entrepreneurs, but very much possible for new entrepreneurs also to approach banks. And there are many government schemes available. The simplest of them is the Mudra Yojana, which covers very small entrepreneurs. It's usually, there are 3 categories prescribed here. And as you go, and here there is usually no insistence on collateral security. But at the same time, one should keep in mind that normally people just see the upper threshold and approach bank. Oh, government says 10 lakhs is available. Why I am not being given 10 lakhs? There are other parameters also which you need to comply with. There will be your turnover ratios which needs to be seen. You will need to see how much equity you are going to bring in. All these parameters put together, bankers will definitely help out. But just like that, just because an upper threshold, I cannot tell, come and give me 10 lakhs or come and give me 2 crores or 5 crores or 10 crores, depending on the scheme involved. So moving ahead. So now what happens is equity financing today has also picked up a lot. It's not just the debt funding, because earlier we used to see that debt funding was the only option available to MSMEs. They just had to, and even if you go further in the past, there used to be only KSFC whom you could approach for term loans. And then now bankers are also ready. From the last two decades, even bankers do actively participate in term loan funding. But equity financing, now angel investors are there at an early stage. Then VC firms are also there at a medium stage. And at a much bigger stage, PE funds are also available for MSMEs as well. So one more option is you can have IPOs also, which you can go, and I am not referring to the full-fledged IPO. You can even go at a medium stage as well for an SME IPO. So there are two options, NSE Emerge and BSE SME. So both of them are more or less similar as far as their norms are concerned. It is up to 25 crores, which I think it is very much any MSME can really look for it. And one of the things are positive net worth should be there. And out of 3 years, 1 year should be positive cash accrual. This is for the BSE. NSE has a slightly different one where they say operating profit from operation should be there for 2 out of 3 years. So SME IPO is really a very good scheme where you can unlock value, and otherwise what happens is whatever capital you have is just on the books. Only when you go for an IPO, it's that your company gets valued and market value can be placed. So we were earlier discussing about the Mudra scheme. So it can cover various, it's not just manufacturing. Many people may feel only manufacturing enterprises are eligible, but it's not just manufacturing. Even services, even trading, and even agri-allied activities can be covered under Mudra Yojana as well. And it could be any type of entity. Even private limited companies are also eligible to go under this, because normally initially it was under the impression that it is only for non-corporate borrowers, but even the smaller private limited companies can go for this kind of Mudra loan as well. And it could be term loans or overdraft limits, or it could be working capital, composite loans. So various options are available under this scheme. And then one more scheme which is available is the Stand Up India scheme. So here what happens is women entrepreneurs have been given a preference here under this scheme. And also SC/ST entrepreneurs, both male and female, can go for it. So it goes from 10 lakhs to 1 crore. And the condition is that normally 51% should be held by that category of entrepreneur. So there's a 10% relaxation, because normally banks insist on 75%, whereas here it is 85%. Then PMEGP scheme, I believe they just discussed about this in the earlier slide as well. So I think we can proceed to the next scheme. So yes, one of the things which I wanted, there is up to a 50 lakh cover for manufacturing, and for services up to 20 lakhs. This has been revised. Earlier it used to be 25 lakhs. Now they have made it up to 50 lakhs as well. And some of the conditions where normally capital expenditure should be there. Only 40% can go under working capital. And for manufacturing, for services, it's a small difference there. And the main criteria is that employment generation should happen. So whatever capex you are proposing, every 3 lakhs should be supported by at least one employment. So there are some negative lists, and certain categories which are not considered. So one of the most famous schemes, I believe, would be the CGTMSE scheme. And earlier it used to be up to 2 crores. Now even up to 5 crores can be covered here. And this covers both existing as well as new micro and small enterprises. This is why it's micro and small. I don't think they've covered medium there. And most of them are eligible under this scheme. So as I was saying, many people will feel that the government says you can go up to 5 crores. Well, you have to also meet the other parameters. It's up to the lending institution at the end of the day whether they want to fund that much or not, because they will have to look at other criteria as well. Also, there is a hybrid scheme, because in the past what used to happen was once you crossed 2 crores, there was no option available. They had to exit the scheme as soon as they took any collateral. Now with the hybrid scheme being there, a partial collateral is permitted and a partial CGTMSE cover is also permitted. So one of the new schemes which had come up this is for small time street vendors, PM Swanidhi scheme, which covers up to 10,000, and it can be enhanced up to 20,000 as well. So one more institution which used to be famous in the past for giving term loan funding, but nowadays due to banks coming into the picture and being more competitive, is KSFC, which is Karnataka State Finance Corporation. Now in today's day and age, actually there are some subsidy schemes which the state government has given. Only under these schemes it's still viable to go with them, because there are a few schemes wherein any category of persons 5.5% interest subvention has been given by the state government. So it's a subvention of 5.5. So it can go up to 2 CR under this scheme. Similarly, there are two more subsidy schemes of KSFC. Can you move on? Yes, so for SCS to entrepreneurs, they have an effective rate of 4%. Earlier on, I was talking about a subsidy of 5.5. Here, the net rate itself is 4%. Here, they should be entirely owned by them, and it can go up to even 10 crores as well. So, this is only the interest relaxation. Collateral security is a different aspect. So, just because interest rate is reduced doesn't mean there is a lack of collateral or vice versa. So, we have to keep that in mind. And one more thing which has come up is the TRED scheme. So here what happens is any person who is normally dealing with, let's say, government departments or PSUs and larger corporates actually can sell those invoices on the portal and get credit from certain companies. It is similar to factoring. It could be something like a reverse factoring mechanism. And here what happens is, shall we go on? So there is a small procedure. So at end of the day, it depends on whether someone accepts or not. It's not a mandatory mechanism. So in case of government or PSU sector undertakings, I believe there are some people who are interested in buying, bidding for those invoices. So the charges may be normally borne by the borrower, but it can be as decided by the parties between them. So one more factor. So many, what happens is, MSME normally there are two different criteria which you see in the banking sector. One is a commercial real estate undertaking and one more is a MSME undertaking. Now there is some misconception sometimes about what will be MSME, what is a CRE at the end of the day. Because many people are under misconception that as soon as land and building comes, it becomes a CRE, which is not really the case. Commercial real estate, as per the RBI circular, what it says is that either the cash flows for the repayment of loan should be from the sale of that real estate or from the rentals of that real estate, then it becomes a commercial real estate. Whereas if it is from a business which is run from that premises, then that is not a commercial real estate. So there are certain cases like, let's say, we acquire, let's say, for our own use. Let's say a CA or any consultant or anyone for that matter buys an office premises for his own use. Then it is not a CRE at the end of the day. But at the same time, let's say you give it on rent, then that becomes a CRE as this one, loan. Whereas, let's say contractors as well, if they are not really engaged in actual, let's say, other than joint developments, if they are just doing a construction, then if they're doing a construction contract, it doesn't fall under CRE. But at the same time, if they're doing a joint development or if they purchase the land and construct and then sell the apartments, so that will be a CRE kind of this one. So moving on, there are certain illustrations given in the circular as well, but this is not an exhaustive list. So it is, we have to read the definition and understand it. So some of these things are where there are some common misconceptions, because hotels, many people feel should fall under CRE, but that's not the case, because primarily they feel there's a rental income coming in, but that is not that kind of a rent actually. So similarly, warehouses, cold storage, all these things, educational institutions as well. So all these cases, it is, even if you own the land and even if you're running from that premises, and that will not be classified as CRE just for that purpose. Similarly, restaurants, gyms, and so on. So NSIC, I believe the earlier speakers have covered this. So there are certain schemes like raw material assistance and other things, but this is all against bank guarantees which they do. So there is one more in relation to startups. Let me just quickly go through that. Many of us, I think we have already covered some of this part earlier, but a startup at the end of the day, a legal constitution should be there. It should be a registered partnership firm or an LLP or a company. Otherwise, as such, it is not considered a startup from the Startup India perspective. And also, not every activity becomes a startup. There are certain criteria which are prescribed, wherein you will have to have certain, yes. Yeah, you can So there should be less than 10 years in existence. So even if you're an existing unit, if you're still within that criteria, you can still register as a startup. And then your turnover should not have crossed 100 crores. And just for the purpose of taking benefits of Startup India, an existing firm, if you're taking it over and doing a new undertaking, then it cannot be considered as a startup. Similarly, let's say one of the key factors is that there should be some product which you are developing or some services which you are rendering which will have some high potential for growth and employment creation or innovation. So some of these criteria you can be recognized as startup. And the registration is very, very straightforward. You just have to go to Startup India. You just have to fill the form there and they get back to you within, I believe, even a few days' time, you get the Startup India certificate. So normally there are multiple stages which we see in a startup, from the ideation stage, wherein it's just an idea. So here what happens is it could be a bootstrapped funding which can be there, or there could be friends and family, or let's say even the pitching contests and events wherein they get some grants. They may get some small amounts, may not be very big, but that should be sufficient for an idea stage as such. Then you have the validation stage wherein there is a proof of concept which comes in. And here it is the seed stage wherein you can go to incubators. We had many of the incubators who spoke in the morning. And there are so many incubators, and many of these infos are very much easily available online. It's not really that complicated. You can just go to Startup India website and you'll get a lot of information there about startups. And there could be angel investors or crowdfunding or many of these methodologies which can be used. Similarly, then there's the early traction stage. And here normally bankers can come in, because at the end of the day, even RBI has told that for bankers to be ready to fund a startup, there should be 12 months of stable revenue. Only in that case, they can be covered normally for funding for startups. So here banks can be considered, venture capital funds, and this is when normally when the product is launched in the market. And the scaling, what happens is at this stage, we need more funds, and there you may need to approach private investors, venture capital funds, and here you will be looking at raising your revenue as well. So the exit options at the final stage could be, because normally you are bringing investors in startups. So they also want some return. So that's why normally you may have to go for an exit. It could be merger which can happen with some existing firm. There could be an IPO which can take place, an SME or a regular IPO as well. Could be buyback which you may do. And it could be selling of your shares as well. A promoter may want to offload his shares and get some return for whatever he has spent his time for. So funding options, I think broadly we can classify them under three categories. Loans, wherein certain schemes banks can fund as well, but in certain cases even incubation centers give some funding which may be at soft terms, because they may give a very concessional rate of interest, and even let's say a moratorium for a year, 2 years and so on, and then 3-year repayment or something like that. And this is something where only the incubation centers may be able to fund, because it's for an idea stage or for the planning stage, wherein bankers may not be able to fund at this stage, because there's no creation of asset normally. All right. So now startup and MSME, the definitions can be very close by. In fact, sometimes MSMEs may fall under startup, or startups may fall under MSMEs as well. But again, we'll have to see on a case-to-case basis which category we may be able to cover them in. Yes. So any questions? I will take it very rapidly because the next session is going to start. So I was trying to cover as much as possible.
Sanket S. Naik for sharing his valuable insights on the topic. He has beautifully explained the various funding schemes available to MSMEs and startups, which include PMEGP, CGTMSE, Mudra loans offered by banks and various governments. Prashant Pai, Secretary, Mangalore branch of SIRC, to hand over the mementos to CA Sanket S. Naik.
the wonderful inaugural session with our various resource persons like Gayatri Ma'am, Arun A.V., Udaya Kumar from SBI, Gautam Nayak, Chairman of SIRC, Mangalore branch of SIRC of ICAI, CA Anantesh Prabhu, the President of KCCI, who addressed the delegates, who addressed the gathering and gave us a lot of insights on how MSMEs and startups can grow and develop, especially in the coastal area of Karnataka. And we had our first technical session, which was by CA Pratiksha Pai from Bangalore, on inculcating entrepreneurship among youth and women. So we got a lot of insights from her, and she was very enthusiastic about how women can grow and develop and how they can take benefits from various schemes and incentives of the government. We had Mr. Canny Mendonça, who gave us a lot of insights on branding, marketing, and digital transformation. Literally, for me, it was like a TED Talk, and I believe a lot of students would have taken a good amount of valuable information from him as to how branding for your product or your service or maybe yourself as a person is very, very important. Then we had Dr. A.P. Achar, the CEO of Atal Incubation Center, NITTE, and Dr. Manish Thomas, CEO of Manipal GOK Bio Incubator, who spoke on global opportunities for Indian startups. So we know Indian startups may have a lot of market in India, but how do you make your product global? Because today, world is a very small thing which you can easily access through your phones. So you have to make your product available worldwide, and that's why the session was organized. Then we had Dr. Adarsh Gowda, the Dean of Entrepreneurship and Consultancy Cell, St. Aloysius College Autonomous, and Dr. Shiv Kumar Magada, former Dean, College of Fisheries, Mangaluru, who gave us a lot of food for thought. It was basically on what opportunities. This was a event or a session which was organized basically for how you can get information about all the incentives, how you can get funding facilities from various government organizations. The last session, which we just had by CA Sanket S. Nayak, was on funding options for MSMEs as well as for startups. Now, when it comes to any business, a plan, a product, a service may be the main key, but at the same time, to keep your business alive, to keep your business on the go, you need a lot of funds. And where do you get the funds from? Either it is the banking or the financial institutions which will give you those funds. So we had a very good idea about what are the different schemes, starting from PM Swanidhi to how you can register in the DPIIT portal, how you can get different exemption benefits, etc. So having had wonderful technical sessions, that is, we have already 7 technical sessions, and this is the last technical session for the day, which is the much awaited and a very interactive session for this particular conclave. So I request Vaishnavi to take over this MSME town hall session, the interaction with experts, where we have seasoned bankers, eminent personalities from various banks representatives who are here to solve your doubts. So whatever doubts or clarifications you have with regard to maybe MSMEs, or you have confusions about startups, how do you approach a financial institution, everything will be solved in this particular technical session. Over to Vaishnavi to take over the last and much awaited session. Very spontaneous, very lively, and a charming personality. It was indeed happy and a pleasure to meet you, ma'am. I request you to kindly come over to the dais and accept a small token of our gratitude and love, because to hand over a token of gratitude, a token of our love and respect to you for taking the time, taking that hard work to do a lot of background work into making this event a grand success. I request CA Gautam Nayak, the Chairman of Mangalore branch of SIRC, and CA SS Nayak, the Program Director, to present a memento to Dr. Arati Shanbag ma'am for beautifully comparing the inaugural session. So can we have a loud cheer? The students can clap out loud. Show your love to your faculty. Thank you, ma'am, from the bottom of our hearts. It was indeed a pleasure to work with you and to co-host this particular event.